cleaning the ice bin, you just need to gather your supplies. You'll get your Sterasheen, a brush, a cleaning brush, a good cleaning towel, clean sanitary towel, some gloves, rubber gloves for your hands, and you'll need a bucket and your ice removal chute. Go ahead and get your gloves. Sterasheen is what we're using here. You can use a quat-based sanitizer mixed to 300 ppm as long as you use a Dawn dish soap as your cleaning agent prior to using the sanitizer. The K5 cleaner sanitizer, green label, is also an approved substitute as a cleaner sanitizer as well. Before you can clean the ice bin, you'll need to purge all the ice out of the hopper. I would advise going ahead and disconnecting the water supply in the back so it doesn't continue to make more ice. Disconnecting the water line in the rear of the unit. Either the service or manager screen. For this one, we're going to use service right now. Service or manager screen will get you the ability to dump the ice out of the bin. Go to inputs and outputs if it's on a newer UI, or just outputs if it's a 620 or previous UI. Go to ice bin dump. It's going to give you some instructions. We'll go ahead and put the removal chute in place. Once you have the chute in place and the buckets, go ahead and dispense. Once the bin is empty, you no longer see the nuggets coming out while the motor's operating. Either the timer is expired, if it's still running, go ahead and hit pause and then stop to exit out of the ice bin dump screen. Go ahead and exit back to the main home screen. You can then remove the ice chute. Get rid of your bucket of ice. After you empty the ice, or with another clean bucket, you go ahead and mix up all the sanitizer you need in a 5-gallon bucket. The auger itself may stick out a little bit. You will have to probably flip that around to make sure it all gets equally sanitized as you soak it. The rest of the parts should go into a single 5-gallon bucket. For the ice bin, if you were doing more of the machine, you may need 2 buckets equaling up to 10 gallons of solution mixed up to clean and sanitize the components. So you can go ahead and shut down the machine. You want to do that through the screen. Upper right corner, go ahead and choose shutdown. You'll be prompted to please wait. The screen will eventually go black. Once the screen goes black, it is now safe to power down the rest of the unit using the rocker switch on the top right of the machine. You can then unplug the unit to further make sure that there's no power to the unit. I will advise, as you're cleaning, you want to make sure that if the machine is pulled out from the drain behind the unit, you want to make sure that there's another bucket back there to catch anything that you rinse through or that may evacuate through the machine during the cleaning process. If at all possible, it's ideal to keep it over the drain, but in most situations you have to pull the unit out to get access to the side panels and the top. Make sure there's a bucket in the rear of the unit. Unlock the front door. With the front door unlocked, leave it open so the pins stay disengaged from the panels. Remove the side panels. Once both the left and right side panels are removed, you can then remove the top panel. This gives you access to the ice bin and the ice maker components. You will need a step stool in order to be able to get up into the top of the unit. The next thing we'll do is remove the knurled screws that hold the ice dispense motor in place, set it to the side so that we can then remove the lid of the ice bin and get down into the ice bin and clean the components. We're going to take this is the ice dispense motor. It's held into place by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knurled screws that you should be able to unscrew by finger. If they are too tight, sometimes they get a little tight, they're hard to pinch with your fingers. You may need to get like a small pair of pliers just to get them to start loosening them, but they're intended to be toolless screws. So we'll get these all off. And also be careful not to drop them down into the machine. So there's 4 up top and 2 directly on the lid. A lot of units, when they ship, they'll have this white tape on them. Just go ahead and peel it off. This is used basically for shipping purposes to help keep the screws in place during shipping. And make sure you don't drop those into the bin because those can clog up the drain opening at the bottom of the ice bin. With the screws removed, you should now be able to pull this up and off the top of the bin. There's enough slack in the cord to go and set it to the side in the back of the machine. Sometimes flipping it upside down works a little better. You've got a wider area. And it'll sit right across the back of the machine. Just be careful not to drop it off. It is heavy. Now we have access to the lid, but you're going to need to get the ice chute moved out of place first so that you can gain access to the bin. There are 2 screws on the top. It's advisable too while you're taking this portion apart too, go ahead and sanitize. You can wipe down this lid, and if you see anything in the ice chute area, to go ahead and this can be wiped down and sanitized while you're in here as well. Inside of the chute, once you have the clear cover removed, there's what we call the ice chute flap. This is what passes through as the ice moves and tells the machine that ice production is being made. Make sure when this goes back in, it's facing the right way. You'll also need to remove the ice nut, the nut at the top. It's called the ice wiper nut. This is what pushes the nuggets down the chute. You unscrew it, set it aside. It can also be sanitized. You'll then need to also loosen this clamp, this giant clamp on the left side of the chute to release it from the top of the ice auger. It might take a little wiggling and it'll pull up and off. Now, you should have enough slack in the drain that comes off of this chute. It will be tight. It's going to hold it. If it is too tight, you may need to remove this clamp as well. but normally you're able to stretch that tube up and pivot to the right or the left to move the chute enough so that you can get the lid up and off. It's advisable if this chute looks like it's got some buildup on it as well, you would need to remove the Hall effect switch from the right side of the chute, then fully disconnect the drain, and then you can take this whole chute off and soak it as well. Inside of the bin, you'll have the auger wheel. You should be able to kind of pull up on it, and the auger will come up and out. Note, there's two different ends. The square peg that goes in here is what inserts in the motor when you reassemble. And on the bottom, there's a round opening because there's a screw in the bottom of the bin down in the top of the wheel assembly that this rotates on. Shake off any ice that's left in there. Take the wheel assembly and auger, and you can go ahead and set it in the bucket to soak it. Looking down in the bottom of the bin, you'll notice that's the screw that the auger wheel pivots on. You have the opening here in the front of the machine where the ice passes through during drink making. And then in the back, check for any clogs in the drain in the bottom of the bin. Make sure nothing is sitting over the opening, that nothing has gotten in there and is impeding the flow of the water or any of the ice melt. Because as we go, we're going to rinse water in here. It'll need to travel down through that drain. What doesn't go down that drain will then flow out the front of the machine. When you're mixing up the sanitizer solution for the components to go into in the bucket, make sure you check if you're using the Sterashine. It's 1 ounce of Sterashine per gallon. So you'll mix it up. You'll need 5 ounces for a 5-gallon bucket. And if you're using a quat or another sanitizer, the K5, for example, just mix per their instructions as well to achieve, I think you need 100 parts per million. 100 parts per million for the Sterashine, 100 parts per million for the K5. Quat would need to be mixed to 300 parts per million. If you're unsure, make sure you get some test strips and make sure that the solution is up to the proper ppm. Prior to soaking these in the sanitizer, you'll want to take these back to the 3-compartment sink, wash, rinse, and sanitize. The full sanitizing will be done in the soak here, but you'll want to wash these in the sink to make sure that it gets washed down and any debris that may have built up on them gets knocked off. Go ahead and dunk it down in. You'll notice the auger does not go all the way down if you're using a 5-gallon bucket. If you have a larger container, that may be advisable. You'll need to soak it for 10 minutes. The auger, since it does stick out, you'll want to rotate it and maybe do another 10 minutes with the other end dunked down in there. You can place the dispense wheel, which you may want to go ahead and take apart. When disassembling the ice wheel, you'll notice there's what we call a finger right here near where it says it's etched for the front face. There's a finger here, and it will need to line up with the groove in the wheel in order to remove the wheel, or else it will not pass through. So you line that up and it'll slide out. That's this groove here. And you'll need to note that for when you put it back together. You can go ahead and slide this down in the bin, or in the bucket. Slide this in the bucket, put it down in the bottom. Let those soak for 10 minutes, then go ahead and rotate this so this end gets soaked for 10 minutes. You can also go ahead, you can dunk the ice chute flap that we removed earlier, the wiper nut I already placed in there, and the clear cover. Go ahead and soak those as well. While the auger and other components are soaking in the bucket, you want to take the ice lid, the lid that you took off to start with, and wash and sanitize it. You could take this back to the 3-compartment sink too and knock off anything that might be built up on it. Then you'll want to spray the sanitizer down on it as well. Put a good wipe down. Before putting it back in place. While those soak, we're going to go back into the bin. We're going to wash. You want to wash with a, if you're using the Sterasheen or the K5, you can use just the Sterasheen or the K5 and wipe down and then do a final spray in here. If you're using a quat base as your sanitizer, you want to make sure that you hit this and scrub it with a Dawn style solution or some sort of dish soap solution. You scrub it with that first and then hit it with the quat sanitizer. We're using the Sterasheen. We're going to go ahead and squirt this down. You want to get in here, and it may be easier to use a little bucket to go ahead and have just some solution in there mixed up with the with your brush and your cleaning towel as well. We'll soak it all down. We'll rinse that ice out of here, stuff that we didn't scoop out. Go ahead and get all around the bin. I'll make sure that this back drain is also functioning. You can rinse it down. You can go ahead and, use some of the sanitizer you made up to go ahead and rinse down things on the inside of the bin. Spray it down with some more sanitizer. Go ahead and give it a good wipe down with your towel. Drain's nice and open. Give it another spritz of the sanitizer after wiping it. And we're gonna let it hold. So this is our spray and hold. While that's sitting, we'll go back over to the bucket and rotate the auger so that it soaks on the other side. Give it about another 10 minutes while it sits in there. Get everything positioned in there so that it soaks. There we go. Back at the bin, we're going to go ahead and spritz it just a little bit more with some sanitizer, wipe it down. And once time's up, we can go ahead and start taking the parts back out of the sanitizer bucket and putting them back in the machine. Now that these are ready to be removed and put back in the machine, as you take them out, you want to wipe them down. You don't want the sanitizer to stay wet on the components. You want to wipe them down dry. As we reassemble the pieces, we want to make sure that the wheel goes back in. Find the groove, put it towards that finger, slide it back down in, then you can rotate it. You'll end up putting this down in the bin first, and then you'll set this deck down in place. Now that everything's clean and sanitized, we can set the wheel back down into place. You want to make sure that where it says front is lightly etched in the sheet metal. Where the front is etched in the sheet metal faces the very front of the machine when you set this down in here. If it is not facing the front, once it makes ice, the ice will not fall through the opening. So this absolutely has to face the front. There's an arrow. We set it back down over that screw in the bottom. And there we go. And it should feel like it won't rotate. It should face forward. And that metal bracket should be also kind of facing towards the front. You want to then make sure you have the correct end of the auger as you place it down in. You want that opening going over the screw that you see down in the bottom of the bin. And that'll fall down in place. As you see, we got the square peg facing up, and that will interlock with the motor again when we put the motor back over top of it. Now we can set the lid back over and put the bin lid back on. With the lid on, now you want to pull the ice chute that you set aside earlier. And make sure when you're putting the chute back on, two things. Notice the orange O-ring. You want to take care that while you remove this chute, you do not damage this O-ring as you push the plastic chute back over. If you notice damage to this O-ring, it will need to be replaced. If this O-ring is damaged, it will allow water and condensation down over top of the outside of the auger, and you'll start to notice a lot of buildup on the outside of the ice barrel here. So make sure that this doesn't get damaged. A little food grade lubricant around here will assist in removing and putting it back on. If you do not have any at your disposal, be as careful as possible not to cut it. You also want to make sure that you get the clamp that you took off or that you loosened earlier back in place so this can be tightened down when you put it back on. You want to make sure it's pushed down as far as you can on the top of the auger, and then go ahead and tighten the clamp. It doesn't need to be, you do not need to use a tool. You can see somebody's put too much force on this one and twisted it. You just need to get it good and hand tight, and that should be sufficient. Put the chute back on. We can put the chute components back together. The wiper nut threads back on the top. And the ice chute flap needs to have the metal part to the left, and make sure that you see how there's a little leg, it's like L-shaped here. You want to make sure it's forward and can move freely like this. If you put it in like that, it will not move and you will not make ice when you get done putting everything back together. So you want to make sure that this flap is in to the front of that chute and it moves nice and freely. We can then place the clear cover back on. There's a lip in the front of the clear cover. That lip goes over that edge at the bottom of the chute, and then you can set the rest of it down flat. So the top of this has floating screws. You'll want to make sure that both sides are snapped down in place to hold the clear shield on. Lastly, we'll put the dispense motor, the ice dispense motor, back in place. There's a peg that needs to match up with the wheel and the auger, and you may need to rotate the auger in the machine by hand a little bit to make it match up. Looks here like we're just a hair out. So I'm going to rotate that a little bit. See if that'll drop in there. There you go. And then once you feel it drop in, you'll know because you'll see that the top of the bracket is sitting on the rails of the top of the machine and on the lid. Now you can go ahead and put the knurled screws back in. Double check, make sure they're all snug. And the motor's back in place, the chute's back in place, the lid, everything should be good. We can now start the machine back up, plug the water back in and start the machine back up. The panels back on, the top and the sides. The hopper's back, the ice bin's all reassembled, side panels and top panel are back on. You can plug it back in, plug the water in, and turn on the rocker switch. Now since the the bin is empty, it's going to take 15 minutes of startup time before it'll even start making ice again. It'll probably take another 15 or 20, so you're looking at 30 to 45 minutes of downtime before you have enough ice to start making drinks again. After that, the machine should be back in full operation.